The creator of SpongeBob SquarePants, Steven Hillenburg, died on November 26, 2018 due to ALS. He was a big inspiration towards the creation of what seems to be a cultural phenomenon, and his passing showed the impact of what had happened within the animation industry. I remember watching the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob and rewatching the majority of the episodes, and it was very funny, pure and simple. I've even watched the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, and to this day it still tickles my funny bone. With merchandising comes video games, and you know damn well that I had to get me a copy of those video games. I've only played 2 as a kid, and they're the ones that we're going to be talking about. SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, and the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, The Game. I remember really enjoying these 2 games as a kid, so revisiting it was certainly a blast, and if anything, I actually revisited it twice for both of these games. One for this episode right here, and one for the Let's Plays, which should be coming out pretty soon. And if you guys want an in-depth analysis as to why I enjoy both of those games, or what I think about one and the other, then I definitely suggest checking those things out. However, if you just want me to jump into the comparisons and all that, let's not waste any time. This is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom versus the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, The Game. Okay, I'm going to be very brief with the story, and as per tradition, I will include a spoiler warning, but I'm just going to say this straight up that both of these games are mostly designed for its gameplay, and it's very apparent once we dive in. I know spoiler warnings are pretty redundant for these types of games. Is this really needed? And while some may say no, I'm just the type of person that doesn't like spoiling things for the sake of ruining anyone's expectations, no matter what the story is, so no matter how basic or simple, I dare not do it. So, this is your last warning before we get into the story, okay? Alright then. Battle for Bikini Bottom starts off with Plankton amassing a clone of robotic armies thanks to his device called the Duplicatotron 3000. He plans on using this technology to steal the Krabby Patty's secret formula, however this backfired as he forgot to set the switch to obey. Meanwhile, at SpongeBob's house, him and Patrick are playing with toy robots and imagine what it's like to have robotic friends alongside them. So Patrick uses his magic wishing shell to make a wish come true, but knowing the idiotic duo, the entire farce is all due to their imagination. It's the next day, and robots are making a muck out of Bikini Bottom, and the sponge himself believes that he is to blame for this controversy. But with the power of collecting golden spatulas, this may possibly be the key to ending the robot masses. Yeah, it's just an excuse for this game to be designed as a collectathon. So we travel to 3 different locations: Jellyfish Fields, downtown Bikini Bottom, and Goo Lagoon. Each separate world has a predicament that needs to be fixed in order to collect more golden spatulas. For instance, at Jellyfish Fields, Squidward needs King Jellyfish's jelly to heal all his stingray wounds, Mrs. Puff at downtown Bikini Bottom needs to collect wheels for various boats in order to evacuate the city, and Larry the Lobster at Goo Lagoon wanting the beachgoers to have their suntan lotion back. You don't have to finish any of them by any means though, most likely you'll end up just helping one of them to the fullest. The requirement for entering the next hub world is all dependent on the amount of golden spatulas you collect. Getting to the next area, in this area for example, requires 15 golden spatulas, as we are suddenly teleported to the Poseidome to fight against Robot Sandy. After disposal, SpongeBob appears to be more suspicious of Plankton as the closer we get to the chum bucket, the more he becomes skeptical about helping Plankton. But thanks to the words of conversation and SpongeBob's naivete, it's brushed off. We help Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy increase security for the Mermaid Lair and apprehend Prawn, one of the villains of the infamous Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy TV show. Help Mrs. Puff again by acquiring various of different art pieces. Why does she need them?
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
And destroy some robots at Sand Mountain so that Squidward can ski. Afterwards, we go to the Industrial Zone to face off against Robot Patrick. After disposing him, SpongeBob is fully aware of the situation now. He is absolutely convinced that Plankton is the reason for the robot menace in Bikini Bottom, but we still need to get more golden spatulas to get inside the chum bucket. So we go to sleep. Somehow that grants us more golden spatulas. We go to Kelp Forest to help Mrs. Puff again, finding some more campers and Barnacle Boy with his crystal gatherings, and lastly, help the Flying Dutchman acquire his ship back. Unfortunately, he doesn't hold up his end of the bargain, so we need to kill him to get the golden spatulas he originally promised us. We now gain access to the chum bucket to face off against Robot SpongeBob in a 2-phase boss battle, one from the outside of him and one from inside his body, to fully deactivate him. Regardless of whether or not you 100% complete the game or not, it seems as though the cutscene still plays the same. After defeating Robot SpongeBob, Sandy warns us that the robots are still out there causing a muck and our job is not finished, despite literally doing everything we can to fully complete it. Though you do get a nifty recreation of the theme song using the game models. Overall, the story... I mean, what the hell do you expect? It's a collectathon to the fullest. It's straightforward and simple. Collect a specific amount of spatulas to beat the game and save Bikini Bottom. The way we collect golden spatulas is somewhat odd, I will say. The fact that we do need to get some help from Patrick and Sandy, despite the fact that we can also acquire some as Patrick and Sandy, is odd. I'm not gonna even bother getting to the logic of how we acquire golden spatulas in our dreams. But it's not meant to be taken seriously, as the story is pretty superfluous, and unfortunately, the same can also be said for the movie game as well. We start the movie off a dream sequence where SpongeBob SquarePants is the manager of the Krusty Krab, and it's our duty to save one of our customers from a cheeseless Krabby Patty. We wake up for the preparation of the actual manager presentation, but unfortunately for SpongeBob, Squidward got the promotion instead. To sulk into his depression, he and Patrick goes into the Goofy Goober ice cream nut bar. The next day, Plankton initiates Plan Z to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula by stealing King Neptune's crown and pinning the blame on Mr. Krabs, not helping with the fact that SpongeBob, still bitter about the manager position, tirades Mr. Krabs for his actions. This caused King Neptune to fry Mr. Krabs' ass, and SpongeBob quickly sobers up from the ice cream alcoholism. He then quickly exclaims that he and Patrick can receive the crown from Shell City within 6 days. King Neptune's daughter Mindy advises the two protagonists that the road to Shell City is dangerous and gives us a magic mirror for communication, even though it's obvious that what she gave us is just a bag. So it's off to our journey as we get into the Krabby Patty wagon and drive off to Shell City, right before it gets stolen by some muggers. So it's through the desert sand, and while this is happening, Plankton has hired a hitman named Dennis to make sure that SpongeBob and Patrick don't accomplish their mission. He's also selling Krabby Patties of his own, and Squidward seems infuriated by his actions, but thanks to Plankton's mind control device, everyone in Bikini Bottom is under mind control, and Squidward is quickly apprehended. Into the bubble-blowing baby hunt, our two heroes retrieve the Patty Wagon back, only for it to be destroyed by some monsters across a dark trench. Saddened by the loss of the Patty Wagon, SpongeBob and Patrick cry their eyes out, but thanks to Minnie's mermaid magic, she has transformed our two heroes into men, giving them more confidence and testosterone. Of course, Minnie's magic is fake, as our two heroes found out after meeting Dennis for the first time. He dispels the magic by just ripping their mustaches off and prepares to stomp on them. By the way, any reason why his face is shown here, but in the actual movie it's not? Thankfully, the two manage to defeat Dennis with the help of a giant boot. But it turns out it's the Cyclops, a resident within Shell City, who kidnaps our heroes, knocking them unconscious. As they wake up, they are gathered inside the Goofy Goober Nut Bar. No, I didn't make that up. That's what's actually happening in the game. For some reason, the developers wanted to include an extra level for the game, so in a roundabout way, they made it so that this level is in SpongeBob and Patrick's dream. Honestly, it's a pretty clever way to include another level without ruining the overall story. However, the one downside to that is the level's not good. We'll get to that soon enough. After their slumber, SpongeBob and Patrick found out that they're in Shell City with a multitude of aquatic knickknacks, and unfortunately, SpongeBob and Patrick are about to be one of them. But they face their fears and accept the fact that they are kids at heart, and with the final tear of the Goofy Goober, SpongeBob and Patrick passed away, only to be revived by a sprinkler system. It's off to get the crown and escape Shell City, but as they escape, they realize how far away Bikini Bottom is. Thankfully, an unknown lifeguard, or at least a man pretending to be one, helps us out as he sails off to Bikini Bottom at Mach speed. Unfortunately for our heroes, Dennis returns with some vengeance, but thankfully for our heroes, his second encounter is the easiest boss battle in the game. He gets hit by a sailboat and gets hit by another one. Why did they play that cutscene twice? Traveling into Bikini Bottom, now dubbed Planktopolis, after Plankton's rule and regime thanks to capitalism of Krabby Patties, SpongeBob and Patrick grab their Patty Wagons, and you may be wondering how the hell do they get the Patty Wagon back. Well, Mindy has this to say.
I think I can bring it back, but you'll need more Goofy Goober tokens.
There you go, another justification for another bullshit driving section. So, finally arriving to the Krusty Krab 2, we witness that King Neptune himself has been mind-controlled by Plankton. So, with the power of the Goofy Goober within our heroes, SpongeBob destroys all the remaining helmets with the power of rock and roll and apprehend Plankton, thus ending our story with the moral of being a kid is okay. So, what do I think overall? Well, it's almost a literal note of the movie, albeit a bridge to hell. Honestly, with the way the actual game portrays the story, it feels like a lesser product. If you watch the movie, you already know the story with some exceptions like the dream sequence, which I'm pretty sure the only purpose was to pad the game out a little longer. Between the two, Battle for Bikini Bottom gets the job done better, though let's be realistic here. None of these two games are winning any rewards for story-driven narratives. They're both pretty basic, straightforward, kill Plankton and save Bikini Bottom. But I'm giving the point to Battle for Bikini Bottom just for its originality and simpleness, whereas the movie's version feels really rushed, unfocused, and overall just not a faithful adaptation for the movie. Of course, that's just its story. If the movie really wants to make it up, it has to definitely impress me with the gameplay. Both of these games are under the genre 3D platformer / collectathon, however both differ in terms of style of gameplay. Bikini Bottom is a lot more sandbox, giving the player the option to explore anywhere and everywhere provided they have enough golden spatulas. There are 3 main playable characters, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy. However, Patrick and Sandy are not available at the same time, but rather available at certain levels, whereas SpongeBob is playable in every single level including the hub world. There are 9 different levels in total, which also means Patrick gets a slight shaft, as out of the 9, Sandy is playable in 5 of them, while Patrick is only available in 4 of them. It also doesn't help that out of the 3, I found Patrick to be the least exciting to play. He sucks at platforming, being unable to attack in the air aside from his ground pound attack, and his aerial mobility is not up to par with SpongeBob or Sandy. He does have a stun ability, and when possible, has the means of a projectile or traversing through water using a Freezy Fruit, but for the most part, unless the level is specifically designed for him, he is mostly not needed at all. Sandy is probably my favorite character to platform, but not exactly to fight. Her Lasso attack has a huge starting lag, leading to some vulnerable attacks, and she can't really stun opponents, making her offensive game somewhat lacking, not helping to the fact that she has a piss poor karate chop. But she easily makes up for her weaknesses by giving her a glide ability. Doing so gives her more ease of platforming, whether it's to nab a collectible or to make these sliding sections more simple. Of course, if you want the best of both worlds, you go for SpongeBob. He may not be the easiest to platform compared to Sandy, but he gets the job done thanks to his neutral attack giving him slightly more distance than normally. His offense is also the best, giving him a full hitbox around him rather than what's in front of him. Later on in the game, you're also granted a bubble bowl and a cruise bubble. This gives him 2 separate projectiles to deal with the onslaught of enemies, making him the best character to use in battle. All his basic abilities alone makes him better than Patrick, but if you want to give him more ridiculous levels of platforming, there's an exploit called the Cruise Boost, which gives him immense amount of momentum. It nearly replaces Sandy as the best platformer character, though the only problem is it's hard as balls to control him, and trying to set up the Cruise Boost itself may take a while without enough practice. Also, listening to the bubble wind-up sound effect can get pretty irritating.
My god, what the hell is that? Oh, I don't know! It's like someone's torturing a freaking cat!
Level design for the most part is pretty solid. At the beginning of Jellyfish Fields in downtown Bikini Bottom, they naturally teach you how to play to each and every character, and add additional challenges to nab extra golden spatulas. As a good rule of measure, it usually takes around 2 worlds to complete if you want to enter through the next area. If not, just do 1 and probably do Patrick and Mr. Krabs' quest as well. Socks are there as collectibles in order to gain more golden spatulas if you need them. They're not as intrusive, and they're a great way to collect more golden spatulas. However, I will say most of them are pretty cryptic to unlock. How the hell was I supposed to figure out that splitting the ketchup and mustard also unlocks a sock in the Krusty Krab? Boss battles for the most part are very fun to do, and personally, my favorite is easily the final boss. However, not every single world is created equally. I don't think Sand Mountain is anything too spectacular. 6 out of the 8 spatulas involve sliding down a mountain and kelp forest. Damn, is this such a hogslog of a mess. It's way too dark, levels go on forever, and it's just way too boring. Another dishonorable mention is this Rube Goldberg machine in the Mermal Lair. It is such a pace killer. I like this level, but this is just a huge blemish on an otherwise well-crafted level. I think that's enough for Bikini Bottom. What about the movie? Instead of the game being a sandbox, the game is more linear based. You beat each level and then you progress to the next. Unfortunately, most of these levels are repetitive. The on-foot missions are definitely an exception, except for maybe these challenge tokens. Some of them range from platforming to a horde of enemies attacking. I do like the platforming, especially with the fact that Patrick is actually better, but the onslaught enemy is just way too much. There's also the Sponge Bowl challenges as well, and I really hate these levels. But what I hate more are these driving and slide missions. They're just nonsensical. I will say that driving missions is slightly better, but I still don't enjoy any of them, especially with the way you gather extra Goofy Goober tokens. 2 of each of these levels are time trials, and 1 of each are ring challenges. There's a total of 7 levels, and if you combine both types of levels, they make up for 14 different time trials. That is just way too lazy. Not even the first levels of these missions are all that fun, all of them having some odd design flaws. The bubble bowling driving stage is impossible to beat without going through 3 different laps, which is bullshit because there's obviously a way for you to finish it in 2 laps, but the game designer says, "Nuh-uh, we need this platform to spawn in the 3rd lap." It's just unnecessary padding. I just want to get the level over and done with. And the dream sequence stage, you follow Goofy Goober in another 3-lap driving section. It's another auto-scroller and it's boring. Something I also have to mention is that the 2 playable characters, SpongeBob and Patrick, does have an upgrade system. You can make every single one of their moves stronger and increase their health bar, however the paddy wagon itself, there is no way to upgrade that. Even if SpongeBob and Patrick are both at 6 hit points, the wagon itself will always default to 3. Thankfully, however, the on-foot stages and the boss battles are still as fun as ever. Well, except for Dennis's second encounter because, well... Can't say for sure if it's a better level design than Battle for Bikini Bottom, though they do feel honestly the same for the most part. Sandy's no longer a playable character, unfortunately, but they made up for this by making Patrick a lot more fun to play as. He has a cartwheel attack which grants him extra speed, his tongue acts like Sandy's lasso, and his offensive game has been given a boost, being able to attack in the air with a better ground pound, and having him spin an attack in order to cover all his hurt boxes. The same unfortunately cannot be said for SpongeBob though. Here, in Bikini Bottom, you start up with 2 special bubble attacks, the head bash and the ground pound. Here though, he loses all his abilities and never gets his ground pound attack back. I think the game designers wanted to make SpongeBob and Patrick more equal in terms of versatility, but I think they made SpongeBob more inferior to his best friend. Also not helping that most of his exclusive Goofy Goober tokens really suck. I really hate these guitar challenges. They just continue to explain why these ring challenges are really crappy. Only one ring shows up at a time. You don't get a hint as to where the next ring shows up. So if you assume that the ring is going to spawn into a specific point when in actuality it spawns the opposite direction, you're screwed. You have to replay through the mission all over again. But that's not even the worst offender. Beating the game in itself is annoying. There's basically a paywall between every on-foot level and the second to last level. You're required to get a specific amount of Goofy Goober tokens in order to progress through the game, meaning you'll need to revisit a lot of older levels and backtrack just to get them, with a total of 50 tokens out of the 68 in order to beat the game. Compared to the Battle for Bikini Bottom, you need 75 spatulas out of 100 to beat the game. Now, yes, you do need to collect more in Battle for Bikini Bottom, but you also need to realize that that game is a sandbox game. It's a lot more free roam. When you don't want to collect specific spatulas for a certain world, you can just not do it if you're not interested. Whereas in the movie, it's supposed to be a linear game, but the collectathon aspect just doesn't design well with one. I want to stress that the movie game can be played for fun though. Not every single level is bad, and some Goofy Goober tokens are fun to collect, and Patrick overall, definitely a huge improvement compared to his Battle for Bikini Bottom counterpart. But I also have to say that I've actually attempted to 100% complete Battle for Bikini Bottom because I was simply motivated to do so. I didn't even bother with the movie though. I just got the bare minimum and I don't feel inclined to beat the repetitive 14 repeated races just for the title of completionist. I hate to say this, but with the score being 2-0 in favor of Battle for Bikini Bottom, can the movie score at least 1 point before the end of the video? I'm just gonna come out and say it. It doesn't. Both of these games look exactly the same, which is very disappointing because as a sequel, I expected there to be some improvement in terms of visual fidelity. There's some cool things like different costumes in the movie, but aesthetically there's literally no difference. In terms of gameplay, I mean, what can I say? Unless you played these games before, you can't tell which game is which. Now, the game doesn't look bad per se, well, with some exceptions. Somehow both of these games have terrible Mr. Krabs model, but I can't say for certain that the game looks impressive. The colors are sort of washed out and the environment doesn't seem to ooze any spectacle. The dark spots look somewhat low res. Rock Bottom and Kelp Forest are easily the worst examples of graphic fidelity, along with David Hasselhoff's back. I mean, good God, what the hell am I looking at? At least the frame rate is steady. For both games, the frame rate is always at a steady 60 frames per second. At least for the Xbox versions. After testing out the GameCube version for both of these games, while Battle for Bikini Bottom also runs at 60 FPS, the movie runs at 30 for all driving sections and some on-foot levels. Now, at the very least, it's not dipping. It is a constant 30 frames per second throughout the level, but it's certainly noticeable, and with half of those frames gone, inputting some buttons can be an issue. Voice acting is actually really good. I think the jokes that get delivered are on point and funny and screams all the SpongeBob nostalgia that I'm sure many fans would love. What they won't like, however, is the replacement for Mr. Krabs and Mermaid Man. The game unfortunately couldn't get Clancy Brown and Ernest Borgnine to reprise their roles, and it's very obvious. They did get Clancy Brown for the movie video game at the very least, even though it's only one scene, and it's cool that they managed to get Scarlett Johansson to play as Mindy in the video game. But while the SpongeBob crew managed to give it their all, I feel as though she was phoning it in. Unless she sounds surprised whenever she explains a plot point or gives us information on a level, she's so monotone and bored. The same is also said for Alec Baldwin for his performance as Dennis. In fact, I don't even know if this is him. He's way too loud to be menacing. It sounds like an uncle trying to impersonate Danny DeVito. Badly. Last thing I mention is some of the way they portray the cutscenes. Bikini Bottom uses actual models to convey cutscenes, and I think it does its job well. The movie also does this as well for some instances, but for the majority of the time it plays stock images with either the narrator voicing the plot over, or some voice clips from the crew. They are new voice clips compared to the movie, so at the very least it doesn't exactly sound them. Sometimes they can actually sound better than the movie.
SpongeBob, wait! Make mine chocolate. SpongeBob!
Yeah?
Make mine a chocolate!
But this is just not how you portray a cutscene at all. It's just lazy. It's unfortunate that circumstances dictate that there is an obvious answer to which one's better. Even as the movie is decent enough, I don't think it honestly compares to Battle for Bikini Bottom. It is a 3D platformer done right, whereas the movie kind of feels really rushed with little to no care, even from the original developers of the game. Boy, is this a depressing episode! I'm revisiting these games with a nostalgia factor, and what I get was a disappointment that one is clearly better than the other. Okay, you know, let's not end it on a depressing or bad note. I just want to state first and foremost that even if the movie is not as good as Battle for Bikini Bottom, it is still a solid enough product, I feel, that eventually it doesn't hurt to try it out at the very least, you know? And even so, if one is clearly better than the other, that still shouldn't diminish any of the factors of both of these games. I still very much enjoyed it when I was a kid, and while I definitely do see some muddy waters within both of those games, especially one with the movie, I still enjoyed them. I still enjoy playing through them, and I honestly don't mind playing through them again. So... Is that Gary? But yeah, I hope you guys are not too disappointed in this episode. I really tried my best to see if there's any glimmer of shines or whatever, but this is the best I got. All I could say is, if you're somehow interested in the last 2 generation of console games, these are solid platformers that you can probably try out for yourself. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyways, thanks for watching this compare and contrast episode. If you guys like this episode, I'm sure you're gonna enjoy most of the previous episodes that I've done so far already, and future episodes that I plan on doing. The scheduling for this, by the way, for the series, in case of anyone's watching this canonically or whatever, I'm thinking about doing it once per month. I think that's probably the best scheduling for me to at least be 2 games to cover in one video, because that's the thing, that's the hard part about making these episodes, is actually beating them, you know? Recording all the necessary footage I need and trying not to get distracted by extra content. Although that does help in terms of making the game look good, I guess. But yeah, if you guys like this video, then definitely leave a like down below. And if you guys have any comments, critiques, and feedbacks, I would graciously appreciate any of them. And as always, this is TheBassSinger signing out. Thanks for watching.